Hello students, today we are going to start the second chapter, that is latitudes and longitudes. In this chapter we will study about latitudes, longitudes, the differences. Okay, so let's start. See, locating places. We all know that the globe is a true model of the earth, but you know that it is not possible to mark all the places on it. While particular maps can contain almost all the places it is meant to have, it is very difficult to locate them. Geographers realize that by drawing imaginary lines on globes and maps and giving them some identification, it would be easier to locate places. These imaginary lines are latitudes and longitudes. These lines are called imaginary since they do not appear on the surface of the earth but only on maps and globes. So, you all know that a globe is a model of the earth, and it is almost difficult for anyone to locate the places on a globe. So what the geographers did, the geographers realized that it is almost impossible for them to locate the places on a globe or map. So what they did, they discover some, they draw some imaginary lines on the globes which help them to locate the places, and those imaginary lines are called latitudes and longitudes. So first of all we will study about latitudes. You see, an imaginary line called the equator divides the earth into two equal halves, that is, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. If it is drawn halfway between the north and the south pole, the part of the earth from the equator till the north pole is called the northern hemisphere, and the other part from the equator to the south pole is called the southern hemisphere. The imaginary lines in each hemisphere drawn parallel to the equator are called parallels of latitude. These lines are circular due to the round shape of the earth and run in an east-west direction. The equator is at 0 degree latitude, and thereafter these lines are given numbers. The numbers of all other lines is followed by N or S, which tells us whether the line is in the northern or in the southern hemisphere. For example, the latitude next to the equator in the northern hemisphere is 1 degree N, followed by 2 degree N, 3 degree N, and so on till 90 degree N, which is the North Pole. The latitudes in the southern hemisphere are marked in the same way till they reach the South Pole at 90 degree. Along with the equator, the four other important parallels of the latitudes are Tropic of Cancer, 23½ degree N, Tropic of Capricorn, 23½ degree S, Arctic Circle, that is 66½ degree north, and Antarctic Circle, that is 66½ degree south. So, I will explain you the whole latitude with the help of some diagram. Okay, with the help of the diagram, I will show you what latitude actually is. Let's start. First of all, you have to know what is equator. You see, equator is an imaginary line that divides the earth into two equal halves. You can see that this is a line which divides the earth into two equal halves. This is the equator. It is an imaginary line. Okay, so we will discuss about latitude now. So, equator is drawn on maps and globes, and they are imaginary lines which is around the center of the earth, and it is called the latitude. And it is a circle that divides the earth into two equal halves. It is a circle which divides the earth into two equal halves. That is, first is the northern hemisphere. Okay, this is the northern hemisphere and this is the southern hemisphere. It divides the earth into two equal halves, that is northern and the southern hemisphere. Now you can see that in each hemisphere, first this is the northern hemisphere, this is the northern hemisphere, and this is the southern hemisphere, right? So in each hemisphere you can see the line parallel to the equator. From the equator, you can see in each line, in each hemisphere, this is the southern hemisphere, this is the northern hemisphere. Okay, so in each hemisphere, the line parallel to the equator, parallel from the equator, This is the line of equator, this is the equator, middle is the equator, you know. And from the equator to the poles, the line parallelly they are drawn. Okay, this is the north pole and this is the south pole. So from the equator, starting from the equator, the line parallelly drawn to the poles, and these are also called the lines, and these are called the circles, like because they drawn from the equator. And you can also see that, see that in this diagram you can see that when the lines of latitude move closer to the poles, the circle gets smaller. You can see that when the as the line of latitude, these are the lines of latitude, this is the equator, these are the lines of latitude. When these lines are move closer to the poles, the circles they are getting smaller. Okay, and say that eventually each pole, the latitude is just a dot. You see, this is the equator, this is the equator. Okay, this is the northern hemisphere and this is the southern hemisphere. This is south pole, this is north pole, and these are the lines of latitude, and they are just a dot. Okay, this diagram clearly shows that. And each latitude is given a number. Okay, each latitude is given a number. The equator is numbered as 0 degree. As you can see, the equator is numbered as 0 degree. Okay, and the numbers of other latitudes go from 1 to 90 degree. It is moving from 1 to 90 degree, and that is in each hemisphere. Okay, from 1 to 90 degree in the northern hemisphere, also in the southern hemisphere also. So another thing, you can see that the latitudes which are numbered as 1, 2, 3, they are very close to the equator. This number 1, 2, 3, the number 1, 2 and 3, they are this 1, 2 and 3, they are very close to the equator, and the numbers 60, 70, 80, 90 up to 90, okay, they are far away from the equator. You can say that the number of latitude, it shows how close or far it is from the equator. The number shows how far or close is from the equator. Okay, so in this diagram you can also see that the equator is numbered as 0 degree. The equator is numbered as 0 degree. Okay, and the other numbers, but the numbers of other latitude are followed by N or S, because this is the northern hemisphere. The upper part is the northern hemisphere, and here is the division of the equator, and the lower part is the southern hemisphere. So the other numbers, that is 1, 2, 3, whatever it is marked as N or S. If it is moving downwards towards the south pole, then it is marked as S, and if it is moving upwards, that is toward the north pole, that is, it is marked as N. Okay, and it is also said that there are two spatial latitudes. Okay, there are two set of spatial latitudes. The first set is near the equator. You remember one thing, the first set is near the equator, and these are called the tropics. You can see these are near the equator. The first set is near the equator, and these are called tropics. Okay, and this is the Tropic of Cancer. The first set is near the equator, and these are called tropics, and they are the Tropic of Cancer, which is in the northern hemisphere. The Tropic of Cancer, which is in the northern hemisphere, and it's numbered as 23.5 degree N, that is 23.5 degree N. And the Tropic of Capricorn is in the southern hemisphere. This is the Tropic of Capricorn. It is in the southern hemisphere, and it is 23½ degree south. Okay, one is the Tropic of Cancer. You remember there are two set of tropics, spatial set of latitudes. There are two spatial sets of latitudes. The first set is near the equator, and these are called tropics. Okay, the first set is near the equator and these are called tropics. They are the Tropic of Cancer. First is the Tropic of Cancer. Remember, Tropic of Cancer, which is 23½ degree N, and second is the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23½ degree south, that is in the southern hemisphere. The Tropic of Cancer is in the northern hemisphere and the Tropic of Capricorn is in the southern hemisphere. And another thing, there are two spatial set I said. The first spatial set is already said to you, and the second spatial set is near the poles. The second spatial set is near the poles, that is the Arctic Circle, that is in the northern hemisphere, which is 66½ degree N, and the second is the Antarctic Circle, that is in the southern hemisphere, which is 66½ degree south. Okay, so what I said, that the first set, what I said, they are the Tropic of Cancer, which is in the first is the Tropic of Cancer, which is in the northern hemisphere, which is 23½ degree north. Second is the Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23½ degree S. Then is the Arctic Circle, that is in the northern hemisphere, which is 66½ degree N, and last is the Antarctic Circle, which is in the southern hemisphere, which is 66½ degree S. Okay. Now see, there are some characteristics of latitudes given in your book. The first characteristics you see, latitudes are parallel to each other. Latitudes are parallel to each other and known as parallels of latitude. I have already shown you in the diagram that they are parallelly drawn. The lines of latitudes are drawn parallelly to each other. So that's why they are called the parallels of latitude. You can see that the first characteristics is the latitudes are parallel to each other and therefore known as parallels of latitude. You can see that these are the lines of latitude. Yes or no? These are the lines of latitude. You see, they are drawn parallelly to each other. So that's why they are called as parallels of latitudes. Okay. The first point is clear. Second is, you see, the equator is the largest latitude. The latitude decreases in size as they move northwards or southwards from the equator. They reduce to a dot at the poles. So, with the help of diagram, it is very clear to you. The equator is the largest latitude. This is the largest latitude, that is the equator. It is the line of latitude. It is in the middle, that is called the equator. Equator means it divides the earth into two equal halves, that is the northern hemisphere. The upper part is the northern hemisphere and the lower part is the southern hemisphere. So, this equator is the largest latitude. You remember this latitude, this equator is the largest latitude. And the latitude decreases in size as they move upwards. How is it decreasing in size? You see, as it is moving upwards, it is decreasing its size. Yes or no? Or if it is moving downwards towards the south pole, it also decreases its size. So it reduces its size and they reduce to a dot at the poles. So this is the north pole, this is the south pole. As it is moving upwards or downwards towards the south pole or towards the north pole, it just reduces and to a dot. So this is the second characteristics. And third, you see, there are 181 lines. You remember how many lines are there? There are 181 lines. Okay, how many lines? 181 lines of latitude. Okay, they are the imaginary lines, na? And how many lines are there? You can count that lines. There are 181 lines in the latitude. The most important latitude, that is the equator, is also called the Great Circle. You remember, The largest line, the most important line, that is the equator. Why it is most important? Because it divides the earth into two equal halves, that is the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. So it is the most important line, and it is the largest latitude also, and it is called the what? Great circle. You remember, it is also called the great circle. The most important line, the equator, that is the equator, it is also called the great circle. It is very important, you remember that also. So in the next class we will discuss about longitude. Hope up to this much you have understood. Okay, in the next class we will discuss about longitudes, its characteristics, its differences, difference between latitudes and longitudes. Okay, so thank you.